Nilaven pressed her back against the cold metal wall, her pale blue skin trembling in the weak light of the twin suns. The ancient ruins around her creaked and groaned in the wind, but she had learned to find comfort in these broken structures. They were like her, abandoned and forgotten. She touched the side of her head where other Kethvari had special bumps that glowed when they connected to the mind web. Nilaven's head was smooth there. Empty. She had been born without the parts that let her people share thoughts and feelings with each other. While every other Kethvari could speak mind to mind across great distances, she could only hear the silence in her own skull. The floating cities above her sparkled like jewels in the sky. Once those had been her home. She remembered being very young, trying so hard to reach out with her mind like the other children. They would all sit in circles, their head bumps glowing soft purple as they shared games and stories without saying a word. Nilaven would sit with them, concentrating until her head hurt, but nothing ever happened. The other children would look at her with pity, then turn away. Her mother had tried everything. Special doctors, ancient ceremonies, expensive treatments from the healing towers. Nothing worked. The mind web was like a beautiful song that everyone could hear except Nilaven. She was deaf to the music of her people. When she turned 15 cycles old, the Council of Voices made their decision. A person who could not join the mind web was not really Kethvari. They could not share in the great thoughts that guided their civilization. They could not add their voice to the collective wisdom. They were broken, and broken things had no place in the perfect cities above. So they sent her down to the surface with a small pack of supplies and a warning never to return. Her mother had cried. Nilaven could see the tears, though she could not feel her mother's sadness through the mind web like a normal daughter would. That was 3 cycles ago. She had not seen another living person since. The surface was a hard place to live. The air was thin and often filled with dust storms. Strange creatures moved in the shadows between the ruins, things with too many eyes and sharp teeth. The water tasted like metal and made her sick sometimes. Food was scarce. She survived on protein pods that grew wild in cracks between stones and sometimes caught small scurrying animals with traps she made from broken metal. But in the long, lonely days, Nilaven discovered something her people never could. She learned to see beauty that existed outside the mind web. When morning light hit the crystal formations scattered across the wasteland, they threw rainbows in directions that seemed impossible. She would sit and watch them for hours, creating stories in her mind about where each color came from. The clouds made shapes that changed constantly, sometimes like great flying creatures, sometimes like faces of people she imagined might be her friends. She gave them names and watched them dance across the sky. At night, the stars made patterns that seemed to tell stories. Her people, connected always to each other's thoughts, never looked up at the sky. They were too busy sharing the same ideas over and over. In the quiet of her own mind, Nilaven found she could think in ways that felt new and strange. She could imagine things that had never existed. She could change her mind about something and not have 1,000 other voices telling her she was wrong. She could have secrets, private thoughts that belonged only to her. Sometimes she even talked to herself out loud just to hear a voice, even her own. The loneliness was the hardest part. There were days when she would have given anything to feel another mind touch hers, to know she was not completely alone in the universe. She would climb to high places and call out to the cities above, begging them to take her back, promising she would try harder to connect. But the cities floated on, silent and unreachable. Today started like any other. She woke in her shelter made from curved pieces of metal and cloth. She ate a small breakfast of protein pods and water she had cleaned through a filter she built herself. She checked her traps and found nothing. She sat on a high rock and watched the morning light paint the ruins in gold and purple. But something felt different in the air. A vibration she could feel in her bones. She looked up at the sky and saw something that made her heart race. A bright streak of light was falling from the stars, trailing fire and smoke. It was not like the small meteors she sometimes saw at night. This was big, and it was moving wrong, like it was fighting against the fall. As she watched, the burning thing grew larger. She could see it was not a natural rock from space. It had smooth sides and strange markings. Parts of it glowed with lights that were not fire. It was some kind of ship, and it was going to crash very close to where she stood. Nilaven felt something she had not felt in 3 cycles, curiosity about other living beings. Someone was in that ship. Someone who might be hurt when it hit the ground. Someone who might need help. Someone who might, just maybe, not care that her mind was broken and her people had thrown her away. She gathered her tools and started running toward where the ship would land. The burning ship screamed through the sky like a dying metal bird. Captain Park Jun gripped his seat as warning lights flashed red all around him. The control panel sparked and smoke filled the small bridge. Through the front window he could see the alien planet rushing up to meet them. "The left engine is dead," shouted Kim Day from his station. His hands moved fast over the buttons, trying to save power for the landing systems. Sweat ran down his face as he worked. "I cannot stop us from crashing." Dr. Lee Yuna strapped herself into her chair and checked her medical supplies. She was the ship's doctor and scientist. Her job was to study new worlds and help her crew stay alive. Right now, staying alive seemed very hard to do. "How long until we hit?" June asked, fighting with the steering controls. 20 seconds. Day called back. "Hold on." The ship New Dawn had been exploring space for 2 years. They had visited many planets and met many strange creatures. But they had never crashed before. They were supposed to be careful. They were supposed to go home safely to Earth and tell everyone about the wonders they had seen. The asteroid field had surprised them. Rocks as big as houses floating in space, moving fast and hitting their ship. The protective shields failed first. Then the engines started braking. Now they were falling toward an unknown world with no way to stop. June pulled back on the controls as hard as he could. The ship shook and groaned. Through the smoke, he could see they were heading for a flat area covered with broken metal structures. Maybe it would be better than hitting mountains. The impact threw everyone forward. Metal screamed against rock. The ship slid for a long distance, digging a deep cut in the ground. Sparks flew everywhere. Then, suddenly, everything was quiet. June's head hurt and something warm ran down his face. Blood. He looked around and saw his friends were alive but hurt. Day had a cut on his arm. Yuna was holding her shoulder and making faces of pain. "Everyone okay?" June asked. "I think my shoulder is broken," Yuna said. "But I can still move it." "The ship is damaged very bad," Day reported, looking at his instruments. "We cannot fly again without major repairs. And our communication system is dead. We cannot call for help." They were alone on an alien world with a broken ship. June felt scared but tried not to show it. He was the captain. His job was to keep everyone safe and find a way home. Outside they could see the strange landscape through cracked windows. Everything looked old and broken. Tall structures made of metal and stone stood like the bones of some ancient city. The sky had 2 suns, and the light looked different from Earth's sun. "Do you think anything lives here?" Yuna asked. Before anyone could answer, they heard a sound from outside. Metal hitting metal. Someone was trying to cut through their ship's wall. The 3 humans looked at each other with wide eyes. Something was outside. Something that used tools. Something that might want to hurt them or help them. They had no way to know which. The cutting sound continued for a long time. Slowly, a hole began to appear in the wall near where Yuna sat. Through the hole they could see movement. Then suddenly a face appeared. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The skin was pale blue like the color of ice. 2 large eyes looked at them with curiosity and concern. The creature had no hair, but its head had a smooth, elegant shape. It looked female, though they could not be sure. The alien saw Yuna holding her hurt shoulder and the blood on June's face. Her expression changed. The humans could see something in her eyes that they recognized, even though she was completely different from them. She cared. She wanted to help. Yuna slowly moved closer to the hole in the wall. The alien did not run away. Instead, she reached through the opening and gently touched the air near Yuna's hurt shoulder, being careful not to actually touch her skin. "Thank you," Yuna whispered, even though she knew the alien could not understand her words. But somehow the message seemed to get through anyway. The alien's eyes widened, and she made a soft sound that might have been her way of saying, "You're welcome." Then she started working to make the hole bigger so the humans could get out of their damaged ship. As she worked, the alien would look up at each of them and make gentle sounds. It was like she was trying to tell them not to be afraid. June found himself feeling less scared. This creature, whatever she was, seemed kind. When the hole was big enough, the alien stepped back and gestured for them to come out. Yuna went first since she was closest. As she crawled through the opening, the alien steadied her carefully, making sure she did not fall. Outside the ship, the humans got their first good look at their rescuer. She was tall and thin with long arms and legs. Her blue skin seemed to shimmer slightly in the light of the 2 suns. She wore clothes made from scraps of different materials, like she had made them herself from whatever she could find. The alien pointed to herself and said a word that sounded like Nilaven. Then she pointed to them and tilted her head as if asking for their names. "Yuna," the doctor said, pointing to herself. Then she pointed to her friends. "June. Day." Nilaven repeated their names carefully and smiled. It was the first smile any of them had seen in many days. The first word Nilaven learned in human language was, "hello." Yuna said it while pointing to herself, then waited for Neelaven to try. When the blue-skinned alien repeated it back, her voice was soft and musical, making the simple words sound beautiful. Every day as the three humans worked to fix their broken ship, they taught her new words. June would point to tools and say their names. Day would explain what he was doing as he rewired the damaged systems. Yuna would describe the injuries she was treating and the medicines she used. What amazed them most was how fast Neelaven learned. After just 3 days she could ask simple questions. After a week she could have real conversations. Her mind seemed to grab onto new ideas like a hungry person grabbing food. How do you learn so quickly? June asked her one morning as they ate breakfast together outside the ship. Neelaven looked down at her hands. My people always said my brain was wrong. But maybe wrong brain learns different way. Day was working on the engine when he noticed Neelaven watching him very carefully. She asked if she could help. He was not sure at first. The engine was very complex and dangerous if someone made a mistake. But when she handed him tools, she always gave him exactly what he needed before he even asked for it. You understand machines? He said, surprised. Machines are honest, Neelaven replied. They do not lie or hide thoughts. When something is broken you can see it and fix it. Not like people. She helped him repair a damaged power cable. Her long, thin fingers could reach places his human hands could not go. She seemed to know which wires went together just by looking at them. Day had studied engineering for many years, but Neelaven had a natural feeling for how things worked. One evening as the two suns set and painted the sky in colors of orange and purple, Yuna sat with Neelaven on a flat rock outside their camp. They had become close friends over the past weeks. Yuna felt protective of this lonely alien who had saved their lives. Tell me about your people, Yuna said gently. Why did they make you leave? Neelaven was quiet for a long time. Then she began to explain about the mind web, how every Kethvari was connected to every other one through their thoughts. How they shared feelings and ideas instantly. How important decisions were made by the whole group thinking together. It sounds beautiful, Yuna said. It is, Neelaven agreed. But I cannot join it. I was born without the right parts in my brain. So I cannot be real Kethvari. I am broken thing that does not belong. Yuna felt angry hearing this. You are not broken. You are just different. Different is bad for my people. We must all be the same, all think together. One person with different thoughts makes problems for everyone. Among humans, our greatest achievements come from those who think differently, Yuna told her. The people who change our world are usually the ones who see things in new ways. This was hard for Neelaven to understand. How could different thoughts be good? How could one person's ideas matter more than the wisdom of many minds together? Over the following days, the humans showed her things that could only come from individual minds. June had a small music player with songs from Earth. Each song was created by one person or a small group, expressing their own feelings and experiences. Some were sad, some happy, some angry. The music was not the same because each human who made it was different. Neelaven had never heard anything like it. Kethvari music was always perfect harmony, every voice singing exactly the same note at the same time. Human music had voices that went in different directions but somehow sounded even more beautiful together. Yuna showed her a book of pictures she had drawn during their space travels. Each drawing showed the same planet or creature, but from Yuna's own point of view. They were not perfect copies of reality, they were reality filtered through one person's unique way of seeing. Why do you draw what you see instead of just taking photographs? Neelaven asked. Because a photograph shows what everyone would see, Yuna explained. But my drawing shows what I see. It shows how the sunset made me feel, or why I thought that alien flower was especially beautiful. It is my thought, not everyone's thought. Day was the one who made Neelaven laugh for the first time. He told silly stories about his childhood on Earth, about the mistakes he made learning to be an engineer, about the time he accidentally turned his hair blue in chemistry class. The stories were not important or wise. They were just one person's memories shared to bring joy to friends. When Neelaven laughed, it was a sound none of them had heard before, light and musical and completely her own. She put her hand over her mouth, surprised by the sound she had made. What was that? She asked. Laughter, June said. It means something made you happy. My people do not laugh, she said. When everyone shares the same thoughts there are no surprises to make this laughter. As the weeks passed and their ship slowly got better, something else was growing. Neelaven found herself caring about these three humans in a way she had never cared about anyone before. Not because they were part of her group or because she was supposed to care about them, but because she chose to care about them. And they cared about her the same way, not because she was useful or because she fit into their society, but because she was Neelaven, unique and irreplaceable. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to be valued for being different instead of rejected for it. The silver ships came down from the clouds like drops of liquid metal. There were 12 of them, moving in perfect formation, making no sound as they landed around the human camp. Neelaven felt her heart grow cold with fear. She knew those ships. She knew what they meant. June, Yuna, and Day stopped working on their repairs and stared at the alien vessels. They had never seen anything so beautiful and frightening at the same time. The ships seemed to be made of living metal that shifted and changed shape as they watched. Neelaven, Yuna said quietly, "Who are they?" "My people," Neelaven whispered. "They have come for you." From the largest ship, figures began to appear. They did not walk out, they simply materialized like ghosts becoming solid. There were 13 of them, all tall and blue-skinned like Neelaven, but different in important ways. Their heads had glowing bumps that pulsed with purple light. They moved together like parts of the same machine, turning their heads at exactly the same time, taking steps in perfect rhythm. At the front was a female who seemed to be their leader. She was taller than the others and the glow from her head bumps was brighter. Her clothes were made of the same shifting metal as the ships. When she looked at the humans, her eyes were cold and empty of any feeling. This was High Harmonizer Velaness, the voice of the collective mind for this region of space. She spoke without moving her mouth, and her words appeared inside everyone's heads at the same time. "We have sensed a disturbance in the order of thoughts," her voice said inside their minds. "Chaotic individual thinking that threatens the harmony of all Kethvari. We have come to remove this contamination before it can spread." The 12 warriors behind her raised their hands. Energy began to gather around their fingers, crackling with the same purple light as their head bumps. They were preparing to attack the humans. "No." Neelaven stepped forward, placing herself between her people and her friends. "You cannot hurt them." Velaness looked at Neelaven as if she was seeing something disgusting crawl out from under a rock. The other warriors stopped their attack, but only because they were too surprised to continue. "The Broken One," Velaness said, her mental voice filled with contempt. "We cast you out because you could not join our perfect unity. Yet you still live like a disease that refuses to die." "I live because I am strong," Neelaven replied. She was surprised by her own words. For years she had believed she was weak and useless. But living with the humans had taught her something different about herself. "Strong?" Velaness laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You are a mistake, a genetic error. These alien creatures have infected your already damaged mind with their chaos thoughts. Individual ideas, personal desires, separate emotions, these things are poison to civilized beings." Behind Neelaven, her human friends prepared to fight. They had weapons but they knew they could not win against these powerful beings. Still, they would not abandon Neelaven. She had saved their lives and they would try to save hers. "The humans are under my protection," Neelaven said, standing straighter. "I will not let you harm them." The warriors looked confused. They had never heard of one Kethvari claiming to protect anyone. In their shared mind, protection was something the group provided for all members equally. The idea of one person choosing to defend others was completely foreign to them. "You have no power to protect anyone," Velaness said. "You are nothing. You cannot touch the mind web. You cannot share in our collective strength. You are alone and alone beings are weak." "I used to think that too," Neelaven admitted. "I used to believe I was broken because I could not think your thoughts or feel your feelings. But living alone taught me things you cannot understand." She looked back at June, Yuna, and Day. They smiled at her, giving her strength. She had learned from them that being different was not the same as being wrong. "In my isolation, I learned to see beauty you cannot see," Neelaven continued. "I learned to solve problems in new ways. I learned to understand creatures who think differently than we do. Most importantly, I learned to choose my own path instead of following the path others chose for me." The warriors began to murmur among themselves through the mind web. Neelaven could not hear their thoughts, but she could see confusion on their faces. What she was saying challenged everything they believed about how minds should work. "These humans showed me that individual thought is not chaos," Neelaven said, her voice growing stronger. "It is creativity. It is growth. It is the power to become something new instead of staying the same forever." Velaness raised her hand to silence the confused warriors. "Enough of this nonsense. Individual thought leads to conflict and disorder. The mind web brings peace and unity. We will destroy these alien contamination spreaders and take you back to be properly re-educated." "No," Neelaven said simply. "I will not let you. You cannot stop us. You have no power." Neelaven smiled, And in that smile was something the Kethvari had never seen before, the confidence of someone who had discovered her own worth. "I have something you will never understand," she said. "I have the power to choose to be better than what others expect me to be. I have friends who value me for who I am, not for how well I fit into their plans. And I have learned that being different is not being broken." The warriors stopped their advance. Even Velaneus seemed uncertain for the first time. The two groups faced each other in silence as the twin suns moved across the sky. Neelaven stood between her people and the humans, not moving, not backing down. The warriors kept their energy weapons ready, but they seemed confused by what she had said. They had never met a Kethvari who spoke like this before. Velaneus floated closer to Neelaven, her purple head bumps glowing brighter with anger. "You have been poisoned by these aliens and their individual thinking. But you are still Kethvari. We can fix you. We can make you normal again." "I do not want to be fixed," Neelaven replied. "I like who I am now." "You like being broken and alone?" "I like being free to choose my own thoughts and feelings. I like having friends who care about me because of who I am, not because they have to care about all Kethvari equally." Through the mind web, the warriors were sharing confused thoughts. Some of them were beginning to wonder if maybe Neelaven was not completely wrong. They had always been told that the collective mind was perfect, but seeing her stand so bravely made them question things they had never questioned before. Velaneus sensed the doubt in her warriors' minds and became even more angry. "Enough. These alien thoughts are spreading like a disease. We must destroy the source before more Kethvari become infected." She raised her hand and energy began to build around it, preparing to attack the humans. But as she did, something unexpected happened. 3 of her warriors lowered their weapons. "High Harmonizer," one of them said out loud instead of through the mind web. "Maybe we should listen to what she is saying." Velaneus turned to stare at the warrior who had spoken. "You dare to have individual thoughts? You dare to question the collective wisdom?" "I am not questioning the collective," the warrior said. "But this Kethvari has survived alone for 3 years. She has learned to communicate with aliens we never met before. She has skills we do not have. Maybe her difference makes her valuable, not worthless." More warriors began to nod. For the first time in their lives, they were thinking thoughts that were partly their own instead of completely shared with everyone else. Velaneus realized she was losing control of her group. The contamination of individual thinking was spreading faster than she had feared. But she was also beginning to feel something she had never felt before: doubt about whether the collective way was always right. The standoff continued as the day grew later. Neither side wanted to fight, but neither side wanted to give up their position. Finally, as the twin suns began to set, Velaneus made a decision. "We cannot allow these alien mind poisons to spread to our cities," she announced. "But we also cannot ignore that you have survived when we expected you to die. You have developed abilities we do not understand." She paused, struggling with thoughts that felt strange and individual in her collective mind. "We will allow the aliens to leave our world," she continued. "But you must go with them. You cannot return to Kethvari space. Your individual thinking is too dangerous to our unity." Neelaven looked back at June, Yuna, and Day. They nodded, letting her know they wanted her to come with them. She had hoped for this but had been afraid to ask. "I accept," she said. The warriors began returning to their ships, but several of them stopped to look back at Neelaven. In their eyes she could see curiosity instead of disgust. Her words had planted seeds of individual thought that would grow, even within the collective mind. Over the next few days, the humans finished repairing their ship with Neelaven's help. She packed the few belongings she had made during her years alone, tools she had crafted, drawings she had made of the cloud patterns, small treasures she had found in the ruins. On the morning they were ready to leave, Neelaven stood outside the ship and looked up at the floating cities one last time. She felt no sadness about leaving. This world had rejected her, but she had found something better, a place where she belonged exactly as she was. "Are you ready?" June asked, coming to stand beside her. "Yes," she said. "I have been ready to leave this place for a long time." The new dawn lifted off smoothly, its repairs holding strong. As they rose through the atmosphere, Neelaven pressed her face against the window and watched her home planet grow smaller below them. The floating cities looked like tiny jewels scattered across the surface. Beautiful but cold and distant. "Are you sure about this?" Yuna asked, taking her hand. "You are leaving everything you have ever known." Neelaven smiled, that expression she had learned from these wonderful humans who had taught her so much about joy and friendship and love. "With you I am sure of everything." In the pilot's seat, June programmed their course toward human space. Earth was many months of travel away, but they had plenty of time to teach Neelaven about her new home. Day was already planning to show her human music and art and literature. As they jumped into hyperspace, the stars stretching into lines of light around them, Neelaven realized something important. She was no longer the broken alien girl her people had thrown away. She was no longer the disabled outcast who lived alone in the ruins. She was something completely new, a bridge between two different species, carrying with her the revolutionary idea that every unique voice deserved to be heard. She would help humans and Kethvari understand each other. She would show both peoples that being different was not a weakness to be fixed, but a strength to be celebrated. In the observation deck, surrounded by the three humans who had become her chosen family, Neelaven made a promise to the stars rushing past. She would spend her life helping others understand what she had learned, that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker, and that love grows best when it is chosen freely instead of forced by obligation. She was finally home.